Morning. Not the golden kind that spills across concert halls. Just a thin, hesitant light slipping through a half-open window. Dust floating in it. The air still. A wheelchair parked close to the wall, as if it, too, prefers not to be noticed. His hands rest on the blanket. Long fingers. Once impatient. Now, quiet. No applause, no piano. The room smells faintly of medicine and old paper. On the small table beside him, a pair of glasses, a folded newspaper, a cup of tea gone cold because he forgot to drink it. Or maybe he didn't forget. Maybe he just didn't feel like lifting the cup. 91. The number feels heavier than it should. Abdullah Ibrahim does not look at the piano in the corner. It is still there. Of course it is. Someone dusts it. Someone keeps it tuned out of habit. But the keys remain untouched most days. White and black, like a memory that refuses to fade, yet refuses to move forward. There was a time when his mornings began differently. Airports, suitcases, a backstage murmur. Now the only sound is the faint mechanical click when the wheelchair shifts a few centimeters across the wooden floor. He doesn't complain. That's almost the problem. Outside, traffic hums in the distance, a city that once carried his melodies in its bloodstream. Cape Town mornings used to vibrate differently. He used to wake up with chords in his head, fragments of rhythm knocking against his ribs, demanding to be released. The piano was never silent back then. Neither was he. Today he stares at the window. The light shifts slowly across the floor. He watches it like it's something fragile, something that might disappear if he blinks too long. His legs don't obey him the way they once did. That's the simplest way to put it. Doctors have names for it. They always do. Degeneration, age, complications. Words stacked neatly on paper. But paper doesn't explain what it feels like to wake up and realize your body has quietly rewritten the contract. He used to sit upright for hours, back straight, shoulders relaxed, hands gliding across keys with that calm authority that comes from knowing exactly who you are. Now sitting upright requires effort. Not dramatic effort. Just enough to remind him that nothing is automatic anymore. The wheelchair is not dramatic either. It does not creak loudly. It does not announce tragedy. It simply exists, steady and patient, waiting for someone to push or for him to gather enough strength to move it himself. Some days he moves it, some days he doesn't. There are photographs on the wall, black and white. A younger man with sharp cheekbones and eyes that seem to carry entire continents inside them. Crowds leaning forward. Musicians watching him with that quiet respect reserved for someone who doesn't need to prove anything. He rarely looks at those photographs directly. Not because they hurt, because they feel like someone else. The world still speaks his name with reverence. Articles, tributes, words like legend and master drift around him, polite and distant. They arrive in envelopes, in phone calls, in invitations he no longer attends. He listens when people speak about him in the past tense, even when they try not to. Used to. Back then. He doesn't correct them. In the afternoons, a caretaker helps him shift from the wheelchair to a more comfortable chair near the window. The movement is slow, careful. There is an unspoken choreography to it. He hates that choreography. Not the person helping him. Just the fact that it's necessary. His hands still remember music. That's the strange part. If he closes his eyes, he can feel entire compositions moving through his fingers. He taps them lightly on the armrest. Soft rhythms, incomplete phrases, a ghost of a melody that never fully lands. Sometimes he laughs quietly to himself. A short, almost embarrassed sound, as if he caught his own mind wandering too far back. He does not speak much about pain. There is physical pain, yes. Stiff joints, muscles that protest, fatigue that creeps in early and stays longer than it should. But the heavier pain is quieter. It sits in the space between what he can imagine and what he can actually do. The piano waits. He tells himself he will play tomorrow, or next week, or when he feels stronger. The promise hangs in the air, unfinished, like a chord that refuses to resolve. Visitors come less often now, not out of neglect, out of life. People have their own schedules, their own urgencies. When they do visit, they speak gently, too gently, as if loud words might shatter him. He notices that. He notices everything. The way conversations shorten, the way silence stretches, the way people look at the wheelchair before they look at him. He is still there, entirely there, his mind sharp, his memories intact, stories layered and complex. But the body dictates the pace now, and the pace is slow. Very slow. At night, when the house is quiet, he listens to recordings. Not always his own. Sometimes he does. And when he does, there is a flicker in his eyes. Not pride exactly. Recognition. As if he's meeting a former version of himself across time. That man played without hesitation. This man measures every movement. He does not speak of fate. He does not call it cruel. He does not wrap his condition in poetry. It is simply the truth of the morning light, the wheelchair by the wall, the piano untouched. 91 years compress into small routines. Wake up, shift weight, sip tea, rest. And somewhere inside him, beneath the stiffness and the quiet, there is still a pulse. Not loud, not demanding. Just there. A rhythm that refuses to completely disappear. Abdullah Ibrahim, 91 years old. He sits there. That's it. No velvet language. No golden hour metaphors. Just a man in a wheelchair, angled slightly toward a window that doesn't care who he used to be. His right hand trembles. Not violently. Just enough to interrupt precision. The same hand that once moved across piano keys without looking. The same fingers that could hold a note in the air and make a room lean forward. Now they rest on his knee. They shake when he tries to button a shirt. There is no orchestra in the background, no swelling soundtrack. The air conditioner hums. A clock ticks somewhere behind him. He doesn't turn to check the time. Time checks him. Abdullah Ibrahim, 91. He doesn't introduce himself anymore. Other people do that, carefully, as if presenting something fragile. He hates that tone. There was a night in Europe. He doesn't say where unless someone insists. A stage lit in white. Cold air outside the theater. Inside, heat from bodies packed too close together. He remembers the way the audience went quiet before the first note. Not polite quiet. Tense quiet. The kind that feels like holding your breath underwater. He pressed one key. Just one. And the sound traveled. The applause afterward didn't come all at once. It built. Layered. Rolled forward like a wave that didn't want to break. He stood. Slight nod. No dramatic bow. He never liked theatrical gestures. That memory doesn't glow, it flickers. Then there was a tour. Long flights, cities that blurred together, hotel rooms that all smelled faintly the same. At some point he left and didn't return the way people expected. Political lines drawn across maps. Decisions made in airports. A life split quietly between continents. He doesn't narrate it. He doesn't frame it as sacrifice. It just happened. Now he sits in a room that feels smaller than any backstage corridor he ever walked through. The wheelchair leaves faint marks on the wooden floor. He notices them. Doesn't ask anyone to clean them. His hand reaches toward the armrest. Misses slightly. Adjusts. The tremor again. No symbolism. It's just age. Someone once asked him if he misses the stage. He didn't answer directly. He said, "Stages are loud." That was enough. The piano in the corner hasn't been moved. The bench is slightly off-center. He could ask someone to align it. He doesn't. The imperfection feels honest. In the late afternoon, light hits the keys at an angle that makes them look almost silver. He watches from a distance, not dramatic distance, just a few meters that might as well be miles on certain days. He doesn't talk about awards. They're stored somewhere, in boxes, in frames. Dust collects on glass like it does everywhere else. Once, after a concert, another city, another country, someone grabbed his hand backstage and said, "You changed my life." He pulled his hand back gently. Not dismissive, just uncomfortable with the weight of that sentence. Now his own hand struggles to hold a glass of water steady. There's no irony in that, just physics. Visitors sometimes ask about the golden years. He doesn't correct the phrase. He lets it hang there. Gold is heavy. People forget that. His voice has softened. Not weaker, just slower. Words take their time leaving him. He chooses fewer of them. Abdullah Ibrahim, 91. He wakes up. He sits. He waits for strength to arrive in small installments. Some days it does. Some days it doesn't. There's a photograph from that European concert tucked into a drawer. Not framed. Just paper. In it, he is mid-note, eyes half closed, body leaning slightly into the instrument as if listening to something deeper than the audience. He hasn't opened that drawer in months. Not because it hurts, because it doesn't change anything. The world still streams music, playlists, algorithms. His name appears between younger artists who never met him. He doesn't scroll. He doesn't chase relevance. The internet can argue about legacy without him. In this room, legacy doesn't help him stand. He shifts in the wheelchair. The movement costs him more than it should. He pauses afterward, catching breath without making a show of it. He shifts in the wheelchair. The movement costs him more than it should. He pauses afterward, catching breath without making a show of it. No grand reflections, no speeches about destiny. Just a man, a body that no longer negotiates, a past that visits in fragments, a stage light, a burst of applause, the hum of an airplane engine on a night flight that felt like escape. Then silence again. He looks at his hands, studies them as if they belong to someone else. The veins more visible now, skin thinner, the tremor persistent. These hands once held entire rooms still. Now they struggle with buttons. He doesn't romanticize it. He doesn't curse it either. He sits there, Abdullah Ibrahim, 91 years old. The clock continues. He watches the light move across the floor, inch by inch, until it no longer touches the piano. The room is quiet, not poetic quiet, just the kind that settles when nothing is scheduled to happen. A blanket lies across his knees, dark blue, slightly worn at the edges. It slips a little when he shifts, and he doesn't bother fixing it right away. The fabric bunches near his left thigh. He notices, leaves it. The wheelchair wheels press lightly against the tile. When he moves, there's a soft rubber sound, a brief friction, then stillness again. No speeches, no reflections about time, just the sound of the wheel. He tries to reach the small table beside him. His fingers hover over the edge before making contact. The tremor interrupts the straight line of movement. He adjusts, slowly. The glass of water vibrates slightly when he grips it. A small ripple. He waits for the shaking to settle before lifting it. Halfway up he stops, sets it back down. A thin ring of condensation remains on the wood. The curtain near the window is slightly uneven. One side hangs lower. Someone probably meant to fix it. Or maybe no one noticed. The light slips through the gap and lands across the floor in a narrow strip. It doesn't reach him. He leans forward a little, not far enough. The piano is still in the corner. Closed. The lid hasn't been lifted in days. Dust gathers along the edge where the wood meets the keys. Not thick. Just enough to show neglect in soft layers. He looks at it without expression. The clock on the wall clicks once every second. Not loud, but constant. The rhythm fills the room more than any melody does now. He adjusts his position again. The wheelchair responds with a muted roll, then a stop. His heel drags slightly against the footrest. He shifts it back into place using the edge of the other shoe. No commentary. The blanket slides lower. He lets it. His shoulders curve forward more than they used to. The spine no longer insists on straightness. It folds inward gently, like paper softened by years of handling. There's a faint mark on the wall near the door where the wheelchair has brushed against it before. A pale scratch in the paint. It wasn't there last year, or maybe it was, and no one paid attention. A caretaker enters briefly, adjusts the cushion behind his back, asks a short question. He nods. The door closes again. Silence returns quickly. He studies his hands. The fingers twitch once, then settle. He presses them lightly against the armrest as if testing them. Not commanding. Just checking. The air feels slightly cool. He pulls the blanket up a few centimeters. The motion takes longer than it should. His breathing changes after small movements now. A subtle shift. He doesn't make a sound about it. On the shelf across the room, there are a few books. Some open with bookmarks stuck halfway through. Pages slightly bent at the corners. He hasn't finished them. They remain in that suspended state. Outside, a car passes. The faint sound of tires on asphalt filters in, then gone. He closes his eyes for a moment. Not sleeping, just resting them. His head tilts slightly to the right. The muscles in his neck don't hold as firmly as before. The room doesn't react. The piano remains closed. The clock continues. A faint crease forms between his eyebrows when he tries to straighten his back. The effort shows for a second, then disappears. He relaxes into the chair again. There's a small stain on the blanket near the edge. Tea, maybe from another morning. It wasn't washed out completely. The fabric carries the mark without complaint. He shifts again. The wheel touches tile. Soft contact. A small echo in the room. Then, nothing. His gaze drifts toward the window, but doesn't fully meet it. Halfway. As if finishing the motion requires more energy than he wants to spend. He doesn't sigh. He doesn't frown. He sits. The light outside changes slightly, becoming less sharp. Afternoon creeping in without announcement. The strip of sunlight on the floor narrows and slides away from the piano entirely. The keys remain in shadow. His right hand lifts an inch, then lowers again. The tremor is subtle but constant. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Just there. A faint indentation remains on the cushion where his body rests day after day. The shape of him pressed into fabric. Familiar. Repeated. The tea on the table has gone colder. He does not reach for it again. The blanket stays uneven. The curtain remains misaligned. The clock keeps its pace. Abdullah Ibrahim, 91, in a quiet room with a wheelchair and a piano that hasn't been opened today. Nothing more is added. Nothing is explained. The wheels touch the tile once more as he shifts a few centimeters toward the window. Then stillness. The wheel squeaks today. Not loud, just different. He notices it. Of course he does. Small changes are easier to track than big ones. Big changes already happened. The small ones arrive quietly. Abdullah Ibrahim, 91. He adjusts his foot on the metal plate. The cold seeps through the sole of his shoe. It reminds him of something. Not age, not weakness, just metal. Cold metal under stage lights in Berlin. Maybe 30 years ago. Or was it Paris? The backstage floors were always colder than the audience imagined. Musicians pacing, someone laughing too loudly, the smell of cables warming under electricity. He hated that smell. No, not hated. It just stuck to his clothes. Back in the room. The wheelchair doesn't care about Berlin. It rolls when pushed, stops when told. He stares at the piano again. The wood has a particular scent, even now. Faint, but there. Old varnish. Dust. Something sweet beneath it. He remembers lifting the lid decades ago, the resistance of the hinge, the way the soundboard breathed when the first chord landed. Wood has a memory. It holds vibrations long after people leave the room. He used to press his ear close to the body of the instrument after rehearsals, just to listen, to the echo still trembling inside. Now he leans forward slightly. Too far. He grips the armrest to steady himself. The tremor interrupts the motion. His fingers tap twice against the metal. 2 taps. He exhales. 30 years ago, he didn't sit still this long. 30 years ago, he walked onto stages without assistance, back straight, eyes scanning the crowd like he was measuring the room's temperature. He could feel when an audience was restless. He could feel when they were ready. He doesn't measure rooms anymore. He measures distance from chair to table, from chair to window, from chair to piano. Short distances, long effort. There was a night, late, maybe past midnight, when he played a piece slower than planned. He stretched it. Let silence sit between notes longer than the conductor expected. The audience didn't cough. They leaned in. He felt that leaning, like a physical force pulling toward him. Silence used to belong to him. Now silence belongs to the room. He shifts again. The wheel squeaks. Annoying. He considers asking someone to oil it, then forgets, or decides it doesn't matter. His hand lifts, hovers over his knee. It shakes, stops, shakes again. He watches it without judgment, as if observing weather. There is no anger in his face, no visible disappointment, just observation. The curtain moves slightly from a draft. The air carries that faint wood smell again. It makes him think of the old piano he once refused to replace. Scratched surface. Slight crack near the lower register. People suggested upgrading. He refused. It still speaks, he had said. Back in the wheelchair, he wonders if the instrument misses him. That's a foolish thought. Wood doesn't miss. It absorbs. It waits. He sits. A long minute passes. Or 2. Time is slippery here. It stretches in the afternoon and collapses at night. He remembers an airport corridor. Bright white lights. A journalist walking beside him, asking something about legacy. He gave a short answer. Something evasive. He always disliked summarizing himself. Legacy feels like a word other people use when they don't know what else to say. The wheel squeaks again as he moves half an inch. Half an inch. His breathing shifts slightly after the effort. Not dramatic. Just noticeable if you're close enough. He looks at his right hand again. The veins stand out more now. Skin thinner. The fingers that once struck keys with deliberate force now hesitate even before reaching for a glass. He doesn't think about what's next. That question belongs to younger men. He thinks about the smell of wood, about how a piano sounds different in an empty hall compared to a crowded one, about how the lowest notes always felt like earth, solid, anchored. He misses that anchoring more than applause. The wheelchair feels narrower today, or maybe his body feels wider. He adjusts, then stops halfway. The blanket slips again. He lets it fall. He whispers something. Not a prayer. Not a sentence meant for anyone. Just a sound. Barely audible. He used to fill rooms. Now he fills this chair. Memory interrupts. A rehearsal in a small European studio. Someone arguing about tempo. He played the piece faster just to prove a point. Smiled faintly. The argument ended. He liked that, ending arguments with sound. The present does not argue. It simply settles around him. The clock ticks. He ignores it. The piano waits. He ignores that too. His hand trembles again. Stronger this time. He presses it against his thigh to steady it. Still, the wood smell lingers. He thinks about lifting the lid, just to let the air touch the strings. He doesn't move. Not yet. The wheel squeaks once more as he shifts slightly toward the window, then stops mid-motion, as if reconsidering. He sits there, not narrating, not concluding, just thinking. No one comes that afternoon. Or maybe someone did in the morning, and it was so brief, it barely counted. 10 minutes. A plastic bag with fruit placed on the table. A quick, "How are you today?" asked while already standing near the door. He answered something short. The door closed. The fruit remains untouched. One apple rolls slightly when he nudges the table by accident. It doesn't fall, just shifts, then settles into a new position. He looks at it for a moment. Then away. The wheelchair hasn't moved in an hour. The squeak from earlier is gone, replaced by the soft hum of the room itself. Refrigerator in the distance. Pipes behind the wall. A faint vibration that never fully disappears. Abdullah Ibrahim, 91. He rubs his thumb against his index finger, slowly, back and forth. A small repetitive motion, like testing the texture of skin. It used to be ivory under his fingertips. Now it's air. There is no dramatic loneliness in the room, no heavy soundtrack, just absence doing its ordinary work. He glances at the door once, not expectant, just habit. Nothing happens. The piano remains closed. He imagines, briefly, the weight of a single note in the lower register. Not a melody, just one sound. How it would sit in this room. Would it fill the corners? Would it feel out of place? He doesn't test it. His shoulder stiffens. He adjusts slightly. The wheel touches tile. A soft friction. Then stillness again. The apple on the table catches light for a second when a cloud moves. A small, bright curve on red skin. It looks almost artificial in its quiet perfection. He doesn't reach for it. There was a time when rooms never felt empty. Even hotel rooms carried noise. Traffic outside. Televisions in adjacent walls. Late-night conversations in hallways. He used to crave silence between tours. Now silence arrives without being asked. He shifts his gaze toward the bookshelf. One spine is bent inward from being pulled too many times. Another leans slightly, unsupported. He notices these things more than he used to. Details. The tremor returns in his right hand. Stronger this time. It travels from fingers to wrist. He presses his palm flat against the armrest to control it. The shaking continues for a few seconds, then softens. He doesn't react. No frustration, no visible disappointment, just waiting for it to pass. Outside, a car door slams somewhere in the distance. Footsteps. Laughter from someone walking past. The sound fades quickly. The room does not change. He tilts his head slightly, listening. For what? He isn't sure. Nothing follows. The blanket slips lower again. He lets it fall almost to his ankles. The air touches his knees. He doesn't pull it back up. A faint ache moves across his lower back. He shifts to relieve it. The movement is slow, uneven. The wheel squeaks once, then quiets. The fruit on the table remains. The glass of water is still half full. He studies the door again. No one knocks. He does not check the time. He no longer tracks hours the way he once tracked rehearsals and flights and set lists. The day stretches. Contracts around small tasks. Sip water, adjust position, breathe. The piano waits in shadow. He looks at it again. For longer this time. His fingers twitch slightly as if rehearsing motion without committing to it. He doesn't move toward it. The apple shifts again when the table vibrates from his subtle movement. A tiny rotation. Red surface, catching less light now. He could call someone. He doesn't. The room remains ordinary. There is no hidden message inside it. No symbolic storm brewing. Just air, furniture, a man in a wheelchair, and time passing without ceremony. His hand trembles again. He watches it. The tremor does not stop immediately this time. It lingers, subtle but persistent, like a faint electrical signal running through wires that were once stronger. He lowers his hand to his lap and waits. Outside, the light fades slightly as the afternoon leans toward evening. The strip of brightness on the floor disappears entirely. The piano is now fully in shadow. He notices. He does nothing. The fruit remains untouched. No one comes back. The clock continues. Abdullah Ibrahim sits there, not expecting anything in particular, not resisting anything either. Just there. The wheelchair angled slightly away from the door. The room unchanged. Late afternoon. The light leans sideways through the curtain, thinner now, almost tired. It doesn't flood the room. It slices it. A pale strip across the floor, climbing halfway up the leg of the piano before fading into shadow. Abdullah Ibrahim sits where he has been sitting all day. The blanket has slipped completely to his ankles. He doesn't notice, or maybe he does and chooses not to fix it. His hands rest on his thighs, still for a moment. Then the faint tremor returns, a soft vibration beneath the skin, like something trying to remember a rhythm and failing. The fruit on the table remains untouched. The water is warmer now. The air feels heavier, not with meaning, just with the slow accumulation of hours. He turns his head slightly toward the window. The motion is careful, measured. The wheelchair responds when he shifts his weight. A small, unintended rotation, just a few degrees. The rubber wheel brushes the tile. A low sound. Not quite a squeak this time, more of a soft drag. He pauses. The room pauses with him. 30 years ago, late afternoons meant sound checks. The murmur of technicians. The first scattered notes warming up in the hall. He used to roll his shoulders back before stepping onto a stage, feeling the space expand in front of him like something alive. Now the space is this room. 4 walls, a piano, a chair. The light thins further. It no longer reaches the piano at all. The instrument disappears into a darker outline. A shape, without detail. He leans forward slightly, as if considering something. The effort shows in the tightening of his jaw. His right hand lifts an inch from his lap. It hovers. The tremor moves through his fingers. He lowers it again. The wheelchair rotates another fraction when his heel shifts against the footrest. The movement is almost imperceptible, but enough to change his angle toward the window. The curtain stirs from a faint breeze slipping through the cracked frame. Fabric brushes against itself with a dry whisper. He listens. No expression crosses his face. No revelation. No visible regret. His eyes rest somewhere beyond the glass, not focused on anything specific. Not unfocused either. Just resting. A car passes outside. The sound travels briefly, then dissolves. Somewhere down the street, a door closes. Distant voices. Then nothing. The room returns to its low hum. The clock continues, steady and indifferent. He shifts once more. The wheel turns a few centimeters, then stops. The rubber makes that same soft contact with tile, a low friction. His breathing is shallow, but even. The blanket lies crumpled at his feet. The apple on the table has rolled closer to the edge, but hasn't fallen. The piano remains closed. He does not look at it now. The light fades further, sliding off the wall, leaving only a dim gray across the floor. The outline of his shoulders blends more with the chair behind him. He sits there. No one enters. No one calls. The wheelchair settles into its new angle. The curtain moves once more, a faint brush of fabric. Then the wheel shifts again, barely, as if adjusting itself under his weight. A soft, dragging sound against the tile. And then stillness.